Everyone to today's presentation. Today I'm going to talk about and show you the new version of GVERSE Connect. For those of you who are not familiar, GVERSE Connect is a data exchange tool that enables sharing of data between the Petrel platform and our very own GVERSE Geographics. If you have access to both Geographics and Petrel, GVERSE Connect can be invaluable in making data transfer between these two applications very seamless, to the point that you can effectively use your software of choice for a particular workflow. So for example, if you've picked well tops or horizons and faults in Geographics, but you want to use them in some specialized Petrel workflow, you can get any data you need from Geographics into Petrel with minimal fuss. So single click transfer, and all the data you need is right there. And this is bidirectional for most data types. So you can run your workflow in Petrel and push the outputs back to Geographics. So that is what GVERSE Connect lets you do, and this tool has been out there for a while, but this latest version that we've just released is quite a significant upgrade, and that is what I will be talking about today. I will show you how we've tried to make it easier to transfer information between Geographics and Petrel. Okay, so let's move on to the demo, and first things first, how do I get to GVERSE Connect? The module is designed as a plugin for Petrel. We use Schlumberger's Ocean SDK to access data in the Petrel project. The Ocean SDK is a set of tools that Schlumberger offers to enable software outside of Petrel to read from or write to the Petrel project. And that is what we leverage to enable this transfer of data via GVERSE Connect. It is right here in the plugin section. Just double click this and that launches GVERSE Connect. You decide your data transfer direction. Are you reading data out of Geographics and into Petrel, or will you be pushing data out of Petrel into Geographics? For today's example, I'll be taking data from Petrel and putting it into Geographics, so I'm going to go with write to Geographics. You must make sure that you're in the correct project before you launch the plugin. Whatever Petrel project I launch this from will be the project that GVERSE Connect will be working with. On the Geographics side, GVERSE Connect will read or write to the active Geographics project. For my setup, for this example, I want to read data from the Petrel project that I have open, and I want to write it to Geographics in this project that I'm calling green. I went with colors to distinguish which project I'm in. The Petrel project I'm calling white, and the Geographics project I'm calling green. This is of course only for the purposes of this demo, to add a bit more clarity as to what project I'm referring to. In practice, this can of course be any name that you've given any of your projects. But I have to make sure that the target geophysics project, green in my case, is set as my active project, so all data that I transfer will be added to this particular project. So that's the setup. Very simple. Just make sure you have the correct projects, and then you can begin selecting data that you'd like to transfer. One of the things that we've changed is that we've streamlined the entire UI, starting with your data selection tree. When you're reading from Petrel and writing to Geographics, this tree will replicate your Petrel project tree. Now the Petrel tree is very customizable. You can create folders and subfolders within those folders. You can have horizons and faults and all kinds of other data within the same folder. You can also have the same horizon or the same object in multiple folders. So it offers a lot of flexibility, but that flexibility can also very quickly become a place of chaos. And if you're working with Petrel, you probably have the tree set up as you prefer it. You're familiar with it. It may seem chaotic to the casual observer, but you know where to find what. In fact, you probably prefer it that way because you're so intimate with the data. So instead of us reorganizing everything, we just replicate your project tree. All the folders, subfolders, entities within each folder, everything is available here as close as possible to the project tree. The goal here is to help you find the data you want to transfer more quickly, so that you don't have to fumble around this tree trying to locate your data because your stuff is not at the spot you're accustomed to finding it at. One drawback of doing it this way is that it makes it more difficult to select all the objects of a particular data type. So if you wanted to transfer all horizons that you have in Petrel, you'd have to go through all the interpretation folders and individually select each horizon. If this is just a couple of horizons, that's no problem. But if you're looking to transfer 10, 15, 20 horizons, this can very quickly become very cumbersome. To get around this, we have an entity selection list. You can use the select all option rather here, and this will then go through the selection tree and turn on all horizons, and then those will be ready for transfer. You can also define your conflict resolution rules here. So what do I do if that same horizon that I'm looking to transfer is already available in GeoGraphix? Do I just want to override the whole thing, or I could create a new copy of the incoming horizon and preserve the original, or I can skip it altogether? So very flexible rules, and these are applicable to all data types that we transfer between the two applications. On the interface, we've also added a lot of tooltips. These question marks that you see peppered all over the interface let you read about what a particular option is for, how it works, and how it will affect your data transfer. The idea is that because these are different applications, both with their own unique design philosophies, how different pieces of data are handled and organized can vary significantly. So in case you're not very familiar with one application or the other, you can use these tooltips to understand the choices you're making and how it will affect your data transfer without having to dig into the help files, which contain more detailed information for each of these settings. Okay, so let's transfer some data now, and I'm going to start with seismic. All seismic data in this Petrel project, 3D volumes and 2D lines, are available in the selection tree. And the format doesn't apply, so this could be realized or not, doesn't matter. The plugin will see it and transfer it. You can see all surveys here, the different 3D surveys, the 2D lines I have available, they're all listed here. Let's say I wanted to send 2D lines over to GeoGraphix. I can select the ones I need, or I can select them all. When you're transferring geophysical data to GeoGraphix from Petrel, as we are now, you must select your target interpretation in the GeoGraphix project. The way we're organized in GeoGraphix is that all seismic work happens within a geophysics interpretation. You can have as many interpretations as you want in your GeoGraphix project, but you must choose the one you want to add data to. That's what this dropdown is for. It will set your target interpretation. Before I begin the transfer, let me bring up the interpretation here. I have the 3D survey here already. I moved this earlier in preparation of this demo. 3D volumes are large, and I didn't want to keep you here staring at a progress bar for 3 minutes. But I don't have any 2D lines here, and I'm going to move the 2D data I have in Petrel over to this interpretation. To do that, make sure the lines you need are selected, click transfer, and that's it. Your 2D data is now available in GeoGraphix, a simple one-click transfer, and the transfer handles everything. Datum adjustments of any sort, any missed eye analysis that you've applied to your 2D lines in Petrel are carried over to GeoGraphix. If your Petrel and GeoGraphix projects have a different CRS from each other, we handle all those conversions here as well. Let's open one of these lines in geophysics, and that's the data I just transferred. I also have this line open in the Petrel 3D view, and immediately you'll notice that the data is the same, but the display is a little different. That is because both these applications are using different color palettes to represent these data. We want you to be as familiar and comfortable with your data as possible in GeoGraphix, so we have also added the ability to transfer these color tables over to GeoGraphix. On the face of it, this is a small feature, but this is by far one of my favorite features, because if there's a color palette that I like, it gives me the information that I need more easily. I'm used to it. I associate different structures and signatures with this color scheme. Well, now I can just bring that over. From the color palettes list, I can select the one I want. I'm looking for seismic default. There it is. I hit the transfer button, and now it is available in GeoGraphix. Let's switch to this palette, make sure we're using the same min-max, and now you can see the data looks very similar to what you had in Petrel. So that's how you transfer seismic and color palettes. This works for 3D data, 2D lines, but I must mention one thing here. Seismic transfer and color palette transfer is one way only. We can only transfer out of Petrel and into GeoGraphix, but not the other way around. But these are the only items this applies to. Everything else, wells, horizons, faults, surfaces, formation tops, all of these can be transferred in both directions from either application to either application. And the workflow for horizons and faults is very similar. Just select the horizons you want. You will need to navigate the tree to get to the horizons you need. Let's say I'm looking for the A, B, and C horizon here. I can check those on. I can also choose some faults to send over. As with seismic, I must make sure I have the correct interpretation selected. Geophysical data in GeoGraphix lives in these interpretations, so you must select the one you want to transfer these data to. After I select my horizons and faults and have the right interpretation here, I can just transfer. But before I do that, let me switch windows so you can see data as it is added. Click transfer and wait a second or two. And my data is now available in GeoGraphix. You can see the horizons, you can see the faults. Let's pop a horizon here on the map. I'm going to add it to the Petrel map as well so we can compare. And there are your horizons. So a simple one-click transfer. It is fast. It handles all survey mappings for your horizon and faults. It figures out any CRS conversions that may be required. Excuse me. And in an effort to keep your data consistent, we copy the horizon and fault colors as well and assign those to the transferred object. Again, a lot of people use colors to distinguish between different objects. So we want to make sure that any such conventions are preserved when you're moving data from one application to the other, and the horizon and fault transfer works the same in both directions. So you can take horizons out of a geophysics interpretation and move them over into Petrel if that is what you're looking to do. So this was all geophysical data, the main caveat here being that you must have an interpretation selected in GeoGraphix, which will be the source or target depending on the direction of your transfer, the source or target for that geophysical data. But if you're looking to transfer surfaces, you don't need that interpretation because surface data goes straight into your active project or your active AOI. We do support GeoGraphix areas of interest now, so you can have an AOI activated and we will make sure that we only read data that lies within that AOI. And when writing to GeoGraphix, if something falls outside the extents of that AOI, it will be ignored and not transferred. Surface transfer is also simple. You just select the surfaces you need to move over and hit transfer. Those surfaces will then be available in the GeoGraphix project. You can add these to your GeoAtlas maps and use them in various workflows. And because now they're part of the GeoGraphix project, you can access them across the suite. GeoAtlas, GeoPhysics, GeoModeling, XSection, Zone Manager, everything can access these as layers. Okay, so now let's get to well data. And the biggest change in this release that we have as far as well data is concerned is the ability to filter well data. So it's not an all or nothing approach anymore. You can choose which formation tops and well faults you actually want to transfer. You can specify the log curves, the individual log curves you'd like to move over. And again, this applies to both directions, transferring to Petrel or transferring to GeoGraphix. In addition to the formation tops and fault cuts and log curves, we can also transfer other types of well data, other pieces of well data. That includes, of course, your well headers. So, just the information about where the well is, what the reference elevation is, and all that stuff. Deviation surveys. So if this is a horizontal well, if this is a deviated well, we will pass the deviation survey between the two applications. Velocity surveys. This is the GeoGraphix term for time depth tables for your well. So any time depth relationship that your well have, check shots, synthetics, whatever that time depth relationship may be, will be transferred over. And of course, we've talked about log curves, formation tops, and fault cuts. Now, the formation tops, fault cuts, you can now choose which ones you want to actually transfer. So right now, I'm transferring data from my Petrel project to my GeoGraphix project. So I'm replicating the Petrel project tree, and this here is my well tops folder. Because all well tops in Petrel show up here in this well tops folder. That's my well tops under stratigraphy, and if I turn this on, and I can see all of these here. So let's say I want to select all of them. I want to choose, I could select individual ones, or I could send all of them. If I had any well faults here, they would show up in this project tree under the faults folder, and they would show up here as well. So again, replicating the tree so you can go in and find exactly what you need, where you expect it to be. We turn them on. This is how it will let me choose which formations I want to transfer. Now, the formation picks and fault picks also are associated with an interpreter. Who made these picks? Who made these picks? And that interpreter will also be transferred over to GeoGraphix. The name of that interpreter, we call these sources in GeoGraphix, and that interpreter who's associated with the picks that we're transferring will be added to this source list that you have selected here. Now, this could be an existing source list that you already have. We default to the active source list, or you could create a new one. So if you don't want to contaminate your data with sources from Petrel and you just want to keep them separate, you can always create a new source list. Source list. Same thing for your strat column. Your strat column is where you define your formations. So you define your formations and then you make your picks in the actual wells as formation tops. So the strat column is where you would define these formations before you can make picks or transfer picks in your wells. So do you want to do it to your regular strat column, the active strat column? All strat columns available in your Geographics project, in this green project, will be available here. I can choose the one I want, or again, I can create a new one, and these tops that I'm picking here or selecting here will be added to this particular strat column. So that's how I choose which tops I want to move. For log curves, I will have to go to settings and turn on this option which says filter by mnemonics, and then I can specify which curves I actually want to transfer. Let's say I want to transfer my DT, my ROBI, and my GR. So that's what I put in here, and now when I'm transferring my data, only log curves that match these exact mnemonics will be the ones that are transferred. Now, what wells will I be transferring all these data for? Because of course, all of these data that I have selected here, formations, faults, log curves, deviation surveys, they all belong to a well. So I can choose to skip a well altogether, and that's where this well list comes in from. So by default, we switch to UWI, so that's what you're seeing here. But if you want, you can switch this to the well name as well, and that update the list. I prefer UWI, so I'm just going to switch this back to UWIs. And so these are the wells that I'm going to be selecting all of these data for. If I toggle off a well here, that is not going to be transferred. No data associated with that well will be transferred, regardless of the selections here. So the wells I want to transfer, let's say I want to transfer all of them. I select them here, and then I make sure I have the tops I want to transfer. I have all of these options checked on. So if I want deviation surveys, velocity surveys, all of these data, I check them on, and then I hit transfer. And that starts the transfer process. So I go well by well, I look at each well. So I'm of course transferring the well header. I found a synthetic, that was the velocity survey for that particular well, that's been transferred. All the formation picks, a log curve, and so we go well by well. Whatever pieces of data we find, we write them over into the Geographics database. So let's just give this a second to finish. We're almost done. 13 wells gone. And of course, this log is a detailed log of each well that's been transferred. You get a summary in the end as well, and you can look at all the logs you have using this Open Logs button. That's going to open the log directory. All the transfer reports that I've made while I've been using this this plugin are saved in this directory. Now I have all my logs completed here. It took me about 33 seconds to do that. Let me bring up Wellbase, which is the Geographics well database. This is where we save all our well data, and you can see that those 18 wells show up here as individual wells. Of course, I have the header information for each well transferred. Now I can use these quick filters to sort through the wells to see what's been transferred. Let's say I want to look for wells that have curve data on them. So click on that, and that's these set of these wells that have curve data. What curves do they have? I can click on this vector button here, and that's going to tell me this particular well only has the GR curve. This particular well has the GR and the ROBI curve. Remember, in the settings in the plugin, we told it just to copy these three curves. So it didn't obviously find the DT curve for this well, so it only transferred those two wells. This well in Petrel may well have as many log curves as it has, but only the ones that I've specified here are transferred. If I had this checkbox off, everything would be transferred. Similarly, let's sort out, let's find wells that have formation picks. That's only these two wells. This tab here in Wellbase shows me all that formation information, including the source that picked this formation and the actual pick depths in TVD and MDV. Calculate the subsea from the well data. So we're getting two wells. The second well had just the A and B formation, didn't have the CDE picks, so they were not transferred because that's not there. So that's how we'd go in and look for the formation tops that were turned on, and then if you find that in one of those wells that we're transferring selected on for the transfer, we're going to push that information here. In the selection, we also turned on velocity surveys and deviation surveys. So this particular well has a deviation survey as well, so it's a horizontal well, and you can see the deviation survey information right here. The velocity table, this gives you the time depth relationship of that well. So whatever time that relationship for that well is, the survey was called 1, and this is that TD, those TD pairs that were transferred over from Petrel. So all of your well data moves over to Geographics. So those are all the different kinds of data that we can transfer over between Petrel and Geographics. Before I leave you, let me exit this plugin and open it up again. But this time, I'm going to set my transfer direction as reading from Geographics. So pulling data from my Geographics project into Petrel. There are some differences on how this works, but essentially the workflows are the same. There is the data selection tree right here. Now this is organized differently because we don't have one single project tree in Geographics. So we've categorized into entities. You have your wells here, all 18 wells that I transferred, and of course, because this was a blank project before I started this demo, so all data in here was pushed from Petrel, so you're going to see the exact same things here. But these are my wells, the 18 wells I have, all my formation tops coming from this particular strat column, no fault cuts here, and these two surfaces that I transferred again from Petrel. Now I don't see any horizons, any faults, because Geographics organizes all geophysical data into interpretations. So now I must select my interpretation. This is my, when I was transferring out of Petrel, this was my target interpretation. Now this is my source interpretation. So I'm reading data from this interpretation, and you can see the tree populates with the 3 horizons that I transferred over and the 4 faults. Transferred 3 faults. The 4th one is the unassigned fault, which is always present in all geophysics interpretations. So that shows up here as well, and I can select the ones I want to transfer. We have all the same data available for transfer: fault cuts, formation tops, log curves, time depth tables, deviation surveys, well headers, and we can choose which wells we want to select it for. Now, the way the transfer happens varies. There are subtle differences in that when we were transferring to Geographics, this source list was we were writing our source to the source list. But now, because we're reading data, this source list is now going to control which picks actually come into Petrel. So in Geographics, we have source lists which are ordered by hierarchy. If you want to follow that hierarchy, if you want to make sure that the source on top of the list is the one that is, it is the one whose pick is coming in, you check this box on. If you check it off, it's going to get every source on that list. It's going to get their picks and transfer them to your Petrel project. Same thing for your strat column. The formation list that you see here is coming from this strat column. If I switch this to something else, this list will then exclude formations that are not on that strat column. So that's how the behavior of these two changes. For well filters, so this right now I have 18 wells in here. I can limit this by using well filters. So I can choose any filter here. Let's say I want to just transfer wells that have curves. So that's going to limit this list to only wells that have curve data. So these are well-based filters. Some of them are predefined, others you can build using Query Builder, but they will be available here. And let's say I'm looking for wells that have formation tops, and that's the only 2 wells that have formation tops. So this list is now filtered down to only wells that have formation tops, and that's the only wells you can select to transfer. If you want to do everything, just go in here and say global, and that's going to give you all the wells that you have available in the well-based database. Also, when you're transferring log curves, small changes over there as well from the settings. You'll see that now you can choose your source curve set. So you can either go all curve sets, so that will give you access to all log curves, because log curves within Geographics are also organized into what we call curve sets. One of those curve sets can be your active curve set or your field data curve set. So if you want to just work with your field data, you select that, and that also gives you the option to use your aliasing scheme. We call them default curves. So if you want to use your aliasing scheme and not just get every curve, but just get the curves that you've defined as default curves, you can switch that over here. And of course, you can also filter by mnemonics. Data that's going into Petrel will live, all well top data will go into this folder. Again, you can choose any folder, any well type folder that you have, or you can create a new one. The interpretation, so surfaces, horizons, faults, that go into this particular folder, which you can also, of course, choose or create another one right here. So that's how things will change a little bit slightly when you're moving data to Petrel instead of moving it out of Petrel. And that we hope will help you, give you more control over exactly what you want in your project and exactly what you're looking to transfer. So that's basically all from me. This is the GVERSE Connect 2019.4 release. It comes with the ability to transfer horizons, faults, surfaces from Petrel to GeoGraphix or from GeoGraphix to Petrel in a single click. You can transfer seismic, 2D and 3D and color palettes from Petrel to GeoGraphix. Also a single click transfer. For wells, we've added the ability to filter data that you need, so you can choose the formations, you can choose the sources for your picks, you can choose which log curves you want to transfer, so that again your data, you only get data that you're looking to transfer instead of just the nuclear option and sending everything over. So the new version is available. It's on our website, ready to download. If you want more information, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. Christina will be sharing my email address with you. We also have more information available on our website, GVERSE.com. I hope you enjoyed this presentation.